Welcome to the Workers' Reading Room. Tonight I will be reading Chapter 14 of F.I.S.T by Joe Eszterhas, but first a quick recap. The previous chapter begins with Johnny starting down a dark path when he and Vince Doyle extort a local pharmacy owner for supplies under threat of violence. Meanwhile, Talbot orders that the strikes be broken and no negotiations made, ignoring the advice of his son and advisor. The next day, F.I.S.T resumes the strike with force, putting their new resources and skills to effective use. After a brutal fight, they break through the company barricade and win the day, though Abe begins to wonder if they have gone too far, clearly conflicted with the methods used to achieve victory. Later, realizing that he's lost, Winthrop Talbot, shocked and broken, concedes to all of F.I.S.T's demands. At the next union meeting, Johnny agrees to back Max Graham as union president under the condition that Johnny be made president of the Midwest Council. Johnny intends to use his new title and connections to unionize the Midwest under F.I.S.T by any means necessary. And now, F.I.S.T, Chapter 14.
"Those guys are here to see you again, Frank," Smitty said.
Frank Vasco crawled out from under the truck, his face sooty, his clothes dirty. He glanced at the two men waiting outside his office.
"You want me to come with you, Frank?" Smitty said.
"Nah, you stay here. I can take care of it." He was a big, broad-shouldered man in his early 30s, and as he lumbered toward the two men, they watched him apprehensively. Frank Vasco said nothing to them. He opened the door to his little office, walked in, and sat down behind his desk. Then he said, his voice calm and sure, "I told you bastards already. Get it through your goddamn heads." "Here's the contract, Frank," one of them said. "You sign it at the bottom." Frank Vasco looked at the paper on his desk, smiled, and said, "The bottom?" "That's right," one of them said. He picked the paper up and ripped it into pieces. "You son of a bitch," one of them said. He reached for the blackjack which was in his belt. Frank Vasco knocked the blackjack from his hand and knocked the man cold. Then he ceremoniously picked the other one up, lifted him into the air, and hurled him through his plate glass window. Weeks later, as he decorated the Christmas tree with his wife and daughter, Frank Vasco opened the door and a man stood there in an overcoat and hat, smiling at him. "I'm Johnny Kovac," he said. Frank Vasco stared at him. Johnny smiled. "It's cold out here. Can I come in?" Frank Vasco nodded and then turned to his wife and said, "Helen, take Aggie to Mom's for a while." His wife looked at the stranger, smiling at her. She was a curvy, statuesque brunette, and as Johnny smiled, he said, "She don't have to go no place, Frank, on account of me." When they were gone, Frank Vasco brought him a beer and sat down across from him and said, his voice cold and angry, "So what the hell did you come here for? You can't scare me." Johnny grinned. "You gotta understand something, Frank. It ain't nothing personal. You and me? Shit, Frank. We probably came over here on the same boat. You speak Hungarian?" "Better than English," Frank Vasco said, his tone hard and unyielding. "Then what the hell we arguing for?" Johnny laughed. "We come from the same country. We're on the same side." "They don't want to sign up, Johnny," Frank Vasco said determinedly. "They took a vote. They don't want to pay dues. Look, Johnny, we got our own insurance. My guys, they got the best overtime of anybody in Chicago, best rate of pay anybody in Illinois. Why the hell should they sign up? 'Cause of the other guys working for other companies that don't got it so good, Frank. We got to think about all the guys driving the road. We got to have all the guys signed up so as we got the push." "I don't give a shit about the other companies," Frank said. "I'm not going to force my men to do something they don't want to do." "Listen, goddammit," Johnny said angrily. "I've seen tough guys before." He paused, lowered his voice. "We can't make no exceptions, Frank." "I'm not gonna do it," Frank Vasco said. "Period." Johnny smiled and got up. He got his hat and coat and went to the door. "Merry Christmas, Frank," he said. Babe Milano sat in his favorite restaurant in the Loop, forking linguine, listening to Vince Doyle talk about a hunky named Vasco and the little help Vince and his hunky friend needed. "The whole world needs a little help, Vince," Babe Milano said. Vince Doyle and Johnny laughed. Babe's man Angel, the size of a mountain and just as talkative, was eating his food with funereal grimness. "You're telling me," Babe Milano said, turning to Johnny with a grin, "that you're a hunky and this guy Vasco's a hunky, and you can't settle this thing between you? I'll tell you something. You never see no Italians going to no bohunks to settle no family argument." "It ain't exactly a family argument, Babe," Vince Doyle said. Milano smiled. "Besides that, I don't know nothing about labor unions. All I know is that my old man sure as hell could have used one in Wheeling, and Capone was always talking about 'em." "Capone?" Vince Doyle grinned. "Yeah, he had this big dream. He was going to set up a whole union." "What kind of union?" Johnny said. "Bartenders. That way all the bartenders in the country'd push Al's booze." They laughed. Angel didn't crack a smile. "Al," Babe Milano said, "he should have paid his goddamn taxes instead of having so many goddamn dreams. I ain't got no dreams. That's why I've got the world by the balls." They laughed. "You like the clam sauce?" Babe Milano asked Johnny. "Yeah, sure. It's great." "Garlic," Babe Milano said. "That's what does it. I have him cut in a whole bulb of this stuff. Cures whatever you got wrong with you. Got a cold, hangover, eat the garlic. It won't stand up for you in bed, eat the garlic. Right, Angel?" "Right, boss," Angel said morosely. "And have her hold her nose," Vince Doyle said. They laughed. "Club doing okay?" Milano asked Vince Doyle. "Fine. Jocko's taking care of it for me. You ought to come down to Cleveland sometime, Babe. Haven't seen you in a while." "We got a big operation going here," Babe Milano said. "Big business, Vince. Always some shit. Last week over in Cicero, some guy goes out into the neighborhood, tries to set up his own numbers. In Cicero. Just like that. Some paisan. No organization behind him. Nothing. Goes out and does it all on his own." "What did you do?" Vince Doyle said. "I talked to him," Babe Milano laughed. "Now he don't want to set up no numbers no more." Babe Milano was 42 years old, a lantern-jawed, graying man with ice-cold eyes, one of the most powerful men in Chicago. The mayor sent him Christmas gifts. The Cook County District Attorney, an unctuous careerist named Donald Carnes, invited him to his dinner parties. He was rich and happy, a big businessman who had a stake in 4 racetracks and owned 2 companies. He was born in Wheeling, West Virginia, in a railroad labor camp. His father, Ippolito Milano, shifted tracks there, carried cross ties, carved out road beds with a pick and shovel. He, his mother and father lived in a wire-enclosed company compound. There was never enough to eat, and the boy, an only child, was always cold. When he was 6, his father was chosen for a work team that was to blast, shovel, and bore its way through a mountain for a new rail line. Each night his father came home covered with a light-colored dust. He had more and more troubled breathing, and finally he couldn't work. His wages were cut right away, but the company permitted Ippolito Milano and his wife and son to stay in his company-owned shack. He fought for air for 3 months and died. The doctor said there were rocks the size of plums in his lungs. The day after his death, the company told Louisa Milano to take her son and get out of the compound. She moved to the Italian section of Wheeling and rented a 2-room apartment. The boy was 7 years old when he started hawking newspapers on the streets of Wheeling. One day he walked into a saloon run by Fazio Felice, a rotund Sicilian rumored to be Wheeling's underworld kingpin, a man who always kept a derringer strapped to his boot. Fazio Felice saw the frail 7-year-old boy in his saloon and threw him out. The next day the boy went back with his papers. Fazio Felice threw him out again. The boy went back again the next day, and this time Fazio Felice screamed, "It's the kid again!" and leaped from the chair, swooped the boy into the air, and carried him toward the door. The boy dropped his papers and they scattered on the whiskey-soaked wooden floor. Fazio Felice stopped, holding the boy in midair, then sat him down on a bar stool. "Kid," he said, "you ain't making me happy." The boy dropped from the bar stool and slowly picked up his papers, straightening them into a neat pile. Then he turned and looked at Felice. "You want some papers?" he said. "Get out of here!" Fazio Felice roared. But the next day, as the boy was hawking his papers, a big man in tight, flashy clothes walked up to him on the street and said Fazio Felice wanted to see him. The big man took the boy to the saloon and Fazio Felice lifted him to the bar stool and said, "Okay, kid, what's your name?" "Anthony," the boy said, "but Mama calls me Babe." Fazio Felice laughed. "Okay, Babe," he said, "you give me papers every day. You give me 20 in the morning and 20 in the afternoon, and don't you mess up once or the deal's off." Fazio Felice treated him like his own son from then on, and by the time Babe Milano was 16, he was a man. He dropped out of school and, to his mother's distress, spent many nights away from home. But he brought money home for the groceries and she was grateful for that. She didn't know that he was working for Fazio Felice, carrying messages and slips at first, then working as a bouncer and collector. In 1921, Fazio Felice was gunned down by a man working for Guido Bertieri, his rival for the underworld gold mine along the Ohio River, and, fearing for his own life, Babe Milano left Wheeling. He went to Detroit to see Giacomo Marchetti, who had been one of Fazio Felice's lifelong friends. Prohibition had gone into effect at midnight, January 16, 1920, and Giacomo Marchetti was the biggest rum runner in Michigan. He had set up a fleet of motor launches and schooners to import top-drawer Canadian whiskey. At first, Babe worked for Marchetti as a lowly rum runner, but reliable and intelligent. He was soon in charge of rum runs to Buffalo, Cleveland, Toledo, Milwaukee, and Chicago. He worked out the deals and percentages with gangs in each city, and, where boats were impractical or too dangerous, he established truck and car fleets to transport the booze. That's how Capone noticed him in Chicago. Babe Milano's shipments came in on time and were uncut, and one day Al Capone offered Babe Milano a job. He could have protection and a chunk of the city if he was willing to take over Al Capone's bootleg supply operation. Babe agreed, even though Giacomo Marchetti told him he would die if he went. Babe left him anyway, told Capone of the threat, and 2 months later Giacomo Marchetti was Tommy gunned to death in a restaurant parking lot in Detroit. Capone, a man with a fine business sense, mourned Marchetti's death and realized that someone would have to take over the operation in Detroit. He picked Babe Milano to oversee Detroit from Chicago. Babe picked Shondor Ellick Gerke, who had helped him make his rum runs to Buffalo and Cleveland, a soft-spoken and polite man who was a mathematical genius. With Babe Milano plotting the overall strategy, the Capone bootlegging operations broadened. Babe Milano went back to West Virginia and down to Kentucky, organizing the moonshiners, and trucks were soon speeding out of the hills across the country loaded with liquor, traveling safe routes created by payoffs. And in the meantime, Babe also ran his own little section of Chicago, taking care of the numbers, gambling, whores, and booze. He wasn't greedy and made no effort to encroach on anyone else's territory, and after a few attempts to muscle in on his, no one tried. Periodically, he toured the cities he serviced to tighten up operations. He liked to meet the men he was dealing with, men like Vince Doyle in Cleveland, Bobby Grimaldi in Buffalo, Albert DeSaperi in Pittsburgh. On October 24, 1931, Al Capone was sentenced to prison and Babe Milano, who had watched his downfall closely, had no desire to be the new mayor of Crook County. He stayed in the background, avoided publicity, filed unchallengeable tax returns, and left the political maneuvering to his subordinates. When Prohibition was repealed, he realized that the future lay in conducting legitimate business with plenty of muscle behind it. He continued his numbers and protection operations in his section of Chicago, opened a number of legitimate nightclubs, and held on to one whorehouse for old time's sake. But he was also instrumental in organizing a syndicate which produced a string of racetracks in Ohio, West Virginia, and Kentucky. And with Shondor Gerke in Detroit, he formed the Haley Jukebox Company, a potential motherlode once the restaurants and bar owners were convinced to install their machines. Sitting now in the restaurant in the Loop finishing his linguine, Babe Milano was pleased with himself. It wasn't a joke. He wasn't kidding. He had the world by the balls. "You want some spumoni?" he asked Johnny. Johnny shook his head. "It's gonna come out of my eyes." Milano laughed. "Angel, you want some spumoni?" Angel's stone face cracked into a wide smile. "Yeah, that'd be great, boss." "Goddamn guy," Babe Milano grinned. "Day he dies, his mouth's gonna be full of spumoni." They laughed. Babe Milano ordered the spumoni for Angel, and Vince Doyle looked at him seriously and said, "How about it, Babe?" Milano looked at him. "Look, you want me to talk to this guy, what's his name?" "Vasco." "Vasco. I'll talk to him, Vince." He glanced at Johnny. "For your friend here." Doyle smiled. "We figured here in Chicago it'd be better if you took care of it." Milano looked at Johnny. "You owe me," he said, his voice hard. Johnny looked at him and didn't say anything. "He's gonna remember," Milano said. "Huh, Vince?" Doyle grinned. "Johnny don't forget. He's 100%. Milano looked at Johnny. "Nobody's 100%, he said. Helen Vasco hurried through the snow with Aggie, shopping bags in her hand. She fumbled with the key, then opened the door, and they rushed inside, shivering. "Hello, Helen," one of them said. There were 3 of them, big, rough-looking men wearing hats and suits. "Who are they, Mommy?" Aggie said. Helen Vasco stepped back against the door in alarm and said, "What do you want?" "We're just going to talk to you a couple minutes, Helen," one of them said. He turned to Aggie. "You're going to stay right here by the Christmas tree and tell your Uncle Jack what Santa's going to bring you for Christmas." "I don't have an Uncle Jack," Aggie said. "Sure you do, honey," the man said. "It's all right," Helen Vasco said to her daughter. "Just stay right here." The men smiled, and 2 of them walked her into the bedroom and closed the door. "Who are you?" she said, her voice shaking. "What do you want here?" One of them stepped closer to her. "Oh, we just want to have a little fun, Helen." He pushed himself against her and fondled her breasts. "No," she said. "Please." "I bet you just love to have fun, don't you, Helen?" He reached behind her, pulled her skirt up, and held her buttocks. She started to cry. "Please." He pulled her slip up and pushed her panties down. The other one pushed himself against her bare buttocks and whispered, "You ever had it like this, Helen? 2 of us at the same time?" Her blouse was ripped open and then her slip was torn off. She stood there naked, sobbing, the 2 of them holding her, fondling her. One of them unzipped his fly and said, "Kneel down, Helen." She stood there shaking, sobbing, unable to move. "I said kneel down." He grabbed her shoulders roughly and forced her to the floor, pulling her toward him by her neck, and then laughed suddenly, and then he slapped her and she slumped against the wall, naked and defenseless and hysterical. The man zipped his pants up and laughed. "Next time, Helen, we ain't gonna stop." Frank Vasco sat in the office of the Cook County District Attorney, Donald Carnes, listening, but the words he heard didn't make any sense to him. "I don't understand," he said. "I've read your statement and your wife's," the district attorney said. "There's nothing we can do. There's no evidence that what happened to your wife has anything to do with your problems with the Federation of Interstate Truckers." "No evidence," Frank Vasco said. "But Kovac was over my house. He came from Cleveland to see me. You want me to prosecute because he paid you a visit?" The district attorney smiled. "That's not against the law in this country." Frank Vasco looked at him and didn't say anything. "I'm sorry," the district attorney said. "Your wife is an attractive woman. It could have been anyone that saw her on the street. He paused. You understand, Vasco? I understand, Frank Vasco said, not looking at him. The next day, he called the Federation of Interstate Truckers office and asked the business agents to come to his office. You sign on the bottom like we told you, one of the business agents laughed, and Frank Vasco handed him the signed contract. You finally got smart, the business agent said. You tell Kovac, Frank Vasco said angrily. Then he stopped. Yeah? What should we tell him? You tell him, Frank Vasco said, his voice low and broken. You tell him Merry Christmas for me. Merry Christmas, Johnny, Anna said. Merry Christmas, Anna. He kissed her lightly. The Christmas tree in the Kovac living room was filled with sparklers. Molly lit one of them, and as the sparks flew around the room, Abe said, She's going to put the house on fire. Let's open the presents up, Johnny said. Anna's first. He went to the tree and picked up a present and yelled, Ma, come on in here. Ilona Kovac walked into the living room and said, The duck is ready. You open yours first, Anna said. Abe laughed. Come on, we ain't got all night. The duck's ready. You heard Ma. Anna opened the package Johnny handed her. There was a diamond ring inside. She looked at Johnny. This one's real, he said. Oh, Anna, Molly said. Let me see. Abe looked at the ring. Did you rob a bank, Johnny? He laughed. I got it on the layaway at Fine Silver's. Anna held the ring, teary-eyed. Yes or no, Johnny said. Listen to the big shot, Ilona Kovac smiled. Give orders again. Abe and Molly laughed. Yes or no, Anna? This ain't supposed to happen like this, Johnny, Anna said. Abe laughed. Come on, the duck's ready. Anna looked at Johnny. Well, sure, she said. They laughed. Johnny put the ring on Anna's finger and kissed her. Abe said, Get the duck, Ma, will ya? Later that night, when they were alone in the living room by the Christmas tree, Anna said, Johnny, do you really want to marry me? You think I'd spend my money for nothing? He laughed. She looked at the ring and said, Johnny, do you love me? Are you kidding? Sure. Why don't you ever say it? He pulled her close and kissed her. I say it. Vince Doyle led Babe Milano to the corner in the back of the nightclub where Johnny was waiting for them. With them was Shondor Gerke, a tall, lean man in his early 30s. Johnny, Vince Doyle said, You know Babe, this is Shondor Gerke. Hey, how you doing? Johnny said, shaking Gerke's hand. Everybody in Detroit's talking about you, Johnny, Gerke said with a smile. Yeah? What are they saying? They wish they had you up there, Johnny, to keep an eye on Henry Ford. They laughed and sat down at the table. Hear that, Vince? Babe Milano said, grinning, looking at Johnny. He's a big deal, this kid. Doyle grinned. So when'd you get in, Babe? Late in the afternoon, Milano said. He looked at Johnny. We came down on Sean's boat. He says to me I got a fish in Lake Erie. Shit, all you got in Lake Erie's a bunch of old tires and new shit. There ain't no fish. Gerke laughed. You got perch in here, Babe. Good bass. All you gotta do is have the patience. Sure you do, Milano said. You fish much, Johnny? In the flats? For what, roaches and rats? They laughed. He's getting married, Babe, Vince Doyle said. Congratulations, Milano said to Johnny. Greatest thing for you, settles you down, gives you a chance to think, instead of running around looking for it all the time. You married, Babe? Johnny grinned. 3 times, Milano deadpanned. They roared. Milano looked around the nightclub, which was filling with customers. A band started to play at the front of the room. What happened to that singer you had? Milano asked. She wore herself out, Vince Doyle smiled. Singing? Like a bunny, Vince said. Milano laughed. You're a union man, huh, Vince? Gerke said. Our business agent, Johnny said. I never thought I'd see you a union man, Gerke grinned. You're doing a lot of good things for your guys, Johnny, Milano said. I'm trying, babe. I mean it. I wish you was around when I was working the mines. You? Johnny grinned. In the mines? West Virginia, Milano said. I was 17 years old. He didn't like it, Gerke said. You're goddamn right I didn't like it, Babe Milano said. Johnny laughed. The car pulled up outside the warehouse, which was Local 302's new headquarters, and Abe jumped out and said, I'm only going to be a minute. We've got a date, Molly said. I got to pick up a file, Molly. I'll bet you even dream about your files. He laughed. I do not, and you know it. What do you dream about? She teased. You know what I dream about. I'm only going to be a minute. He walked into the warehouse, laughing, and when he saw the light at the end of the hall, he hesitated. He didn't understand why anyone would be in the office this late. He went closer to the door and heard their voices. He started to turn away, but then he stopped in the corridor and listened to them. Johnny, Milano said, they're an anti-labor company, for Christ's sake. All you gotta do is go for a company that's good to its workers. Johnny laughed. Like yours, huh? Hell yes. We're good to our workers, Milano said. No complaints, Gerke grinned. Milano said, It's easy, Johnny. Your drivers don't deliver booze to any bar unless the bar's got one of our company's jukeboxes in it. How many jukeboxes you talking about? Thousands of them, Milano said. Here, Michigan, Illinois. That's a big operation, Johnny said. There was a pause. Vince Doyle said, Babe did us a favor with Vasco, Johnny. Milano smiled. We'll help your guys, the union, whatever way we can. You know that. I've got a lot of respect for you, Johnny. Johnny grinned. Sure you do, babe. All right then, Milano said. Is it a deal? It's a deal, Johnny said slowly. Terrific, Milano said. Terrific. Now, I'd like to give you a nice wedding present, Johnny. I don't need nothing, Johnny said. Who's talking need, Johnny? Milano said. You're an important man. You got all kinds of people looking at you. Buy yourself a nice home. It's my gift. To you and the missus. In the corridor, Abe turned from the door, his face a mask of disillusionment and hurt. He walked quietly down the dark hallway and out the front door of the warehouse. In his office, Johnny turned to Babe Milano angrily and said, I told you I don't need nothing. Doyle said, Hey, Johnny, Babe was just trying. I know what he was trying. Milano smiled. I was just trying to help you, Johnny. That's all. Their wedding was one of the largest ever held in the flats. The mayor sent policemen to direct traffic. The newspapers sent photographers and held the Sunday edition. Max Graham sent a complete china setting as his wedding present. The ceremony was a solemn high mass with 3 priests officiating. The St. Stephen's Dramatic Club Choir sang the Ave Maria. When Johnny and Anna walked out of the church with their wedding party, a huge crowd awaited them. They were bombarded with rice. Johnny's wedding party was made up of Mishka, Vince Doyle, and Tom Higgins. Abe was his best man. At the reception afterwards in the sweltering hot church hall, there were hundreds of people, 3 bands, and 2 wedding cakes, one a Hungarian dobos tort, the other a Lithuanian spice cake. Anna stood in the middle of the floor in her wedding gown. A long line of men stood in front of her, waiting to kiss the bride. Johnny watched as Mishka kissed her. That's enough, Mish. Mishka ignored him and kept kissing Anna. Will you let her breathe? Johnny laughed. Petey Marr pushed Mishka away. It's my turn. You want to go get some air? Abe said. I'm supposed to stand around here, Johnny said loudly, and watch all these guys kiss my wife? They walked upstairs and into the sacristy, which was empty. There was a calendar on the wall with a picture of a bleeding Sacred Heart of Jesus, opened to August 1938. The windows were open. The priest gets out of here after Mass, Johnny laughed, like some big-ass bird. He opened a cabinet and started rummaging through it. What are you doing? Abe said. I'm looking for the wine. We got wine downstairs. You ever had any of the priest's wine? I was in the 6th grade. Ma made me join up and be an altar boy. Here it is." He held up a bottle of opened wine and grinned. "Every day I had to serve. Before the priests come in, I had a glass of his wine." He found 2 glasses and poured wine into them. "Best damn wine. Priest's got terrific taste." He handed Abe a glass and held up his own. "Here's to you and Molly. That frame of hers, she must be terrific," he laughed. "Huh? You can tell me. I'm a married man." Laughing, he drank the wine from the glass. Abe watched him and put his glass down. "What'd you do, Johnny?" Abe said quietly. Johnny looked at him. "Jesus, Johnny," Abe said, his voice heated but low. "What the fuck'd you do?" "I got married," Johnny said, grinning. "If I knew you'd take it so hard, I'd—" His grin faded. He stopped in mid-sentence. "We had dreams, Johnny." "What's the matter with you?" "We had fucking dreams." Johnny looked at him. "You took, Johnny, didn't you?" "What are you saying?" "You took." He spit the words, his voice loud and angry. "I took nothing from nobody," Johnny said angrily. Abe paused, lowered his voice. "I heard you. I had to pick something up in the office. I heard you." "You heard what?" Johnny said. "You gonna buy yourself a nice home, Johnny? With your wedding present?" "Listen, I didn't—" "You listen. You're gonna piss it all away? Everything? Every goddamn thing we built up? You and the fucking punks you got around you, pushing guys to do things they don't wanna?" "I didn't do nothing, goddammit." "I don't believe you, Johnny." "I'm telling you, I didn't do nothing except what's gonna help the guys." "Jukeboxes?" Abe shouted. "They're gonna help them?" He looked away from him. "Shit, Johnny." "Those jukeboxes aren't gonna hurt nobody. Listen, Milano's a friend of ours." "You sold out, Johnny. We had something clean." "Clean?" Johnny said angrily. "What the hell's clean? Out there in the street? Look at what we're getting the guys. They got more money. They got insurance. We get that by being clean?" They glared at each other. There was a long silence between them. "I'm going to California," Abe said quietly. "I talked to Graham. They need my help with a local out there." "When you coming back?" Johnny said, his voice low but still angry. "We're moving out there, me and Molly." "Christ, Abe." He turned away from him, then turned back, his voice choked and imploring. "Listen, there's highways getting built, trucks all over the place. We're gonna have contracts to work out, guys to sign. We're growing big, Abe. I need you." "No, you don't, Johnny." Abe walked out of the sacristy. Johnny looked after him. When he walked back down to the church basement, a forced smile on his face, Anna put her arms around his neck. The band in the background was playing as artists. It was Bedlam. "Where were you?" she said. "I was talking to Abe." She smiled. "I want you to talk to me." He smiled slightly. "How you doing, Mrs. Kovac?" She kissed him lightly. "Talk to me more," she said. He kissed her. "More," she said. In the background, Higgins bellowed, "3 cheers for Johnny Kovac, the best friend a working man ever had." The crowd cheered. "I can't hear you, Johnny," Anna said. He kissed her again. And that is the end of Chapter 14 of F.I.S.T. Thank you for listening to the Workers' Reading Room. Have a good evening.